The Dreamer by Pam Muñoz Ryan and Peter Sis. Ocean. The horse pulled the wagon slowly up a dirt road and stopped in front of several red-roofed houses that overlooked the river. Father pointed to one of them before helping my madre from the wagon. "Where's the ocean?" asked Laurita. "Very close. We are near the mouth of the river that runs into the sea." Father pointed behind the houses to the top of a hill. "Just on the other side is the Great Pacific. Listen." Neftali heard a shushing sound, rising and falling, like the snore of a giant. "Can we go see?" asked Neftali. "Just to the ridge," said Father, lifting Laurita to the ground. "Then we must all unload the wagon." Neftali ran past the house and up the hill, followed by Laurita. At the top, between the cliffs of Huilque and Maule, they stopped. Neftali's breath caught in his throat at the sight of the infinite colors and the gentle curve of the faraway horizon. He had never imagined the height of the white spray breaking against the rocks, the dark sand, or the air that whispered of fish and salt. He stood, captivated, feeling small and insignificant, and at the same time as if he belonged to something much grander. Laurita leaned into Neftali's side. The wind whipped their hair. Then, at the sound of the conductor's whistle, they ran back down the hill. Father stood next to the wagon and patted his chest. "The salt air is invigorating, yes?" Neftali and Laurita nodded. My madre handed the children boxes to carry, and they raced to see who could be the first to reach the house. On their way back to the wagon, they passed Father, who seemed to have the strength of 3 men as he carried one of the mattresses. Neftali stopped and grabbed Laurita's arm. "Did you hear him whistling a tune?" "I couldn't be sure," said Laurita. But Neftali was sure, and he grinned. By late morning, they had set up their temporary home. Before Neftali or Laurita could begin to beg to go down to the ocean, Father came to find them. "Put on your swimming suits. We are going to the beach. We have much to do there." Neftali grabbed Laurita's hand and jumped up and down. He did have much to do there, building sand towers, collecting shells, and searching for driftwood. My madre smiled and led them to the bedroom. While Neftali changed, he could not contain his joy. This place, it seemed, was already making Father more good-natured. Maybe here, Neftali could share his discoveries with Father, and maybe here he would listen. On the walk to the beach, Neftali ran ahead of the family, then turned to look at them. My madre released her confining bun, and her hair flowed behind her, like a young girl's. Father had rolled up his pant legs in order to stroll barefoot in the sand. He had slung several small blankets over one arm, and in the crook of the other, a basket. Laurita skipped circles around him, seemingly without fear of a reprimand. Was this the same family he lived with in Temuco? Neftali raced back to them and took my madre's hand. Father began to whistle again, and Neftali did the same. With every step, the sound of the ocean grew louder. Soon, Neftali could not hear Father's whistling or his own. What had been a gentle shushing on the other side of the hill was now a deafening, repetitive rumble. Boom! Shwa! Boom! Shwa! 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 Boom! Shwa! As my madres set up their picnic, Neftali stood and stared at the sea as if he were the entire audience watching a performer on a grand stage. He loved the way the waves bowed to him. He loved the way the sea foam danced in and out, unable to make up its mind about whether to stay or go. He felt Laurita tugging on his arm. "Look, a stone that looks like a calico cat." She bent to pick it up. Neftali rushed to the hem of the sea. "Here, Laurita, the home of a mollusk and a tiny bird skeleton, just like in the almanac at school. She ran toward him. Let me see. They examined each other's discoveries. Then Laurita ran to a rocky pool. What is this, Neftali? She held up a knot of string with something shiny embedded inside. He hurried to her side. Laurita, put it down. That is dangerous. It was cut from a fisherman's pole. Rodolfo showed me at the river once. Inside is a sharp hook that can make you bleed with one touch. Her eyes widened. She set it on top of a rock and ran off to collect shells. Neftali looked at the expanse of clean, damp sand. He picked up a stick and began writing his name. But he could not stop with only his name. He wrote, Laurita, my madre, father, Rodolfo, Uncle Orlan, Neftali, 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 Neftali! When he looked up, father stood with his hands on his hips, Laurita obediently at his side. How long had father been calling his name? Neftali quickly dropped his stick. Is your mind so muddled that you cannot hear me when I stand so close? You need to pay attention. Neftali looked at the sand. Yes, father, I was just practicing my writing. Father didn't even glance at the words in the sand. Follow me. We have work to do. He marched toward the ocean. As they walked behind father, Neftali turned to Laurita and asked, What work? She shrugged. Father stopped before his feet touched the water. He cleared his throat as if to make an announcement. You will master something useful this summer. The ocean will increase your leg muscles. And when you are in the water, you will be able to think of nothing else. You will focus. This is exactly what you need, Neftali. And Laurita, you are becoming far too much like your brother. With any luck, the exercise will build your appetites and make you stronger. Into the water, both of you. Neftali looked at the immense ocean. He looked at tiny Laurita, innocently holding a handful of shells. Could father possibly mean that they should go into the ocean without him? Even the small waves were choppy, and farther out the swells rose higher than their heads. Neftali looked at father. No. Father smiled, rubbing his hands together. Neftali felt sick, so this was his big plan. We will do this every day, father said. It will make you strong. And if you do not wade out far enough, I will make you stay in longer. Go into the water and swim until I blow the whistle. His voice turned stern. Now! Reluctantly, Neftali took Laurita's hand. Rodolfo had taught Neftali to swim in the river pools near home, but the ocean was much fiercer, and Laurita was just a beginner. As they walked slowly toward the waves, Neftali pulled her close. Every few steps, he looked back at Mamadre, his eyes pleading for a reprieve. Once he caught her eye, but she quickly lowered her head and pretended to be busy unpacking the lunch. Had she known all along about father's intentions? Neftali and Laurita took baby steps toward the powerful sea, cringing and trembling. With each step, Laurita clung tighter and tighter to Neftali's arm. When the first small waves hit their ankles, they both cried out from the cold. Neftali turned toward father, his eyes begging to return to the safety of the beach. Father only smiled and applauded. Neftali knew he had no choice. He pulled Laurita a few steps farther. The water was only knee-deep, but the force and pulse of the ocean made it feel as if it were a monster trying to swallow him. How had Rodolfo known? Had he, too, been forced to endure the waves? Would they be swallowed in one gulp and pulled to their deaths? Waves slapped their thighs, and Laurita stumbled. Neftali gripped her hand. Hold on tight! A wave broke against their chests. Laurita slipped under the dark water. Neftali jerked her up. She choked and sputtered and began to cry. Neftali looked back at father. Surely now they could come in. But father shot an arm forward and pointed to the waves again. Neftali searched for Mamadre on the shore. She stood now, watching them, clutching a towel, her face twisted with worry. Why was she not signaling for them to come in? Why was she not yelling, Basta, no mas, enough is enough? Naphtali faced another swell. This time, the wave was so strong that it pulled him beneath the surface too. Salt water surged up his nose. He tried to open his eyes underwater, but all he could see was the whiteness of bubbles. He felt Laurita's arm groping for him. Naphtali's feet found the sand, and he jumped up, coughing. He reached for Laurita, pulled her toward him, and lifted her into his arms. Even though Naphtali had not heard Father's signal to come in, he turned and staggered to shore, holding the hysterical Laurita, who clung to his chest like a frightened kitten. Mamadre ran forward and took her from him. Father threw up his arms and shook his head. "Tomorrow you will stay in longer." Naphtali did not say a word. He wrapped himself in a blanket and trudged toward the summer house. "Naphtali!" called Mamadre. He did not answer. Before he was out of earshot, he heard Father say, "Let him go. As long as he is home before sundown, he'll be fine. Tramping the dunes will toughen him. Something needs to put muscle on his bones." Naphtali glanced back. Father stood with his arms crossed. Mamadre comforted Laurita. Naphtali turned and continued walking away from them. With each step, his thoughts screamed louder. Wasn't he fine just the way he was? How would the daily terror in the ocean make him stronger? What made Father so cruel? And why did Mamadre do nothing to stop him? Was she just a servant to Father's whims? Were they all at his mercy? Naphtali stormed up the dunes. Something deep and fierce was growing inside him. Where had that feeling come from? Had the ocean fed it to him? When a ball of tangled line unravels, what remains on the bar?